Hello, and welcome back to another great episode of the Grateful Redhead podcast. I am Angie Ringler, your music-loving, eco-passionate host, and I'm grateful to be joined today with Skylar Saba. Is it Saba or Saba?
Either one. I say Saba, but it's either one.
I must admit, I am a fan of yours on Instagram. I love the things that you share. And not only do you share really valuable tips, but you share them with like this really fun and really light way of sharing it. So it doesn't seem so serious, because saving the planet feels pretty serious these days. So I want to thank you first for being on the show today and making that time. So let's start with a little introduction about yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited and I just can't wait to connect with you. So I'm Skylar. I like to say I'm the human behind Happy Earth Habits. So I look at Happy Earth Habits as my platform. I'm on Instagram and TikTok, and I like to make videos to help people connect to the planet and also to help them make sustainability not as scary. So I love that that was what you were picking up already, because that's really my intention with what I do, is to just make sure that it doesn't seem overwhelming. Because when I started to learn about sustainability and learn about what was happening with our planet, it freaked me out. And I was like, what am I going to do? There's so much information. There's so many things I can do. There's so much trash that I'm using. And it was just, I was kind of frozen. Like, there was this moment that I remember, I was living in New York City at the time, and I was walking home and I was looking at all the trash on the streets. So in the city, you put the trash on the streets. In the apartment buildings, there are like hundreds of bags of trash on the street at all times. And I was walking home, I was looking at all this trash, and I remember I just went out on my fire escape and I called my mom, and I was crying because I was like, we're doomed. I don't know what we're going to do. This is crazy. And my mom was like, okay, yeah, but also, like, that's not how you really do things. This isn't like, you don't just sit here and like be mopey, and you normally do things. So what are you going to do about it? And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do about it, but I'm going to figure out something to do. And so I started to like look at my life and pick it apart and be like, where can I be more sustainable? How can I lower my waste? What can I do to just be better? And throughout that journey, I started to learn so much, and I wanted to share it. So that was when Happy Earth Habits was born. And I kind of remember this day I was at the beach and I was cleaning up trash, and that's when it hit me. Happy Earth Habits. That's the name of this. And this is what we do. And we make sustainability fun, and we make it digestible. We make it easy. And like a big part of it was, I didn't want it to be polarizing. I wanted it to feel like anybody could be sustainable, whether they live in New York in a city, they live in the country, they live by the ocean, they live in another country, like anybody who is a girl, a boy, whatever they are, they can do it. So that was something that with my platform, I wanted it to feel digestible. And one of my favorite things is like my grandma, who's 95, she follows my Instagram and does it. And I have kids that are in elementary school that follow my Instagram and like try to be more sustainable. So it's really a range of anybody. And that was my intention. So that's the overview of what I do. But really, I just try to make it easy to understand, not overwhelming, and like anybody can do it.
So take us back to kind of that day on the fire escape, right? I imagine you drenched in tears, mama, help me out, right? But she knows you, and she was like, no, pull yourself up. This is not the way that you're going to react. So what do you think was do you remember what the first thing was that you said, that's where I'm going to start?
It was with fashion. I went to school. So I studied product development, and I worked in, the ski industry for a really long time. So I was a buyer in the ski industry, and I've always been in love with outdoors, and that's kind of where my motivation has been. And that's where my connection to the planet has always started, was just playing outside. And when I was working in the ski industry, I remember being like, everybody's complaining about no snow, but we're buying $100,000 worth of one kind of jacket. Like, this can't, like, there was something that wasn't adding up, but I didn't know a ton about it, like about the production side of it. So I went to school for product development and started to learn. And that's when I actually minored in ethics and sustainability. So when I started to get into sustainability, I started with my clothes because that was what I knew most about. And that was where I started. So sustainable fashion was really what started the whole thing. So I started looking at what my clothes were made out of, how much water was in it, you know, what went into making my clothes. How can I, how much, honestly, I didn't realize how much clothes I was buying and how many things I was just constantly getting new of, or, you know, when you live in New York and you work in fashion, it's this idea of always having to have the cool new trend and look this certain way. And I was buying all this stuff and I wanted to be like, how can I not do that? So I started to get really into buying secondhand clothes. I started to get into wearing what I wanted to wear. So I made a pact with myself that I wasn't going to buy anything new for a whole year. And unless I really needed it, like I didn't want to be too hard on myself. Cause like if I needed new underwear, I wasn't going to be like, I'm going to go secondhand that. Or if I needed like new leggings or something, you know, that it's like, I might need to buy some things, but I wanted to be really like logical. I didn't want to buy any fast fashion and I didn't want to buy like new fashion-y kind of things. And I mean, I kind of did it. There were some things that I would have to buy, like tank top, like there were some things that I ended up buying, but I think it was down to like 15 or 16 things. I could like count it out, write them down what I bought for a whole year. And that was where I started. And I was vegan. I was already eating vegan. So I felt pretty good in that area. And so then I started to clean my bathroom up. And I just started literally like one thing at a time. After I got my closet cleaned up, I went to my bathroom. I went to my bathroom and I started to clean up my bathroom. Like, how can I switch what can I do in the shower? How do I make this sustainable? And what was interesting that I learned along the way was I actually felt better, like, with the products that I was using. So I wasn't necessarily using anything like harsh chemicals. I was already pretty on the clean product kind of scale. But the more that I got into these eco products, the more I felt in alignment with my truest self and what felt good for me. So when I was eating in alignment with the planet, I felt better. When I was, you know, using products that were clean and plastic free and non-toxic and like laundry, all of this stuff, I started to feel so much better. And I thought it was really cool watching how that changed my life. Was like when I was wearing conscious clothes, when I was eating consciously, when I was using conscious products, I started to see a lot of things in my life change as well. So that's what the underlying vision for me and wanting to share with that too, is that experience of when you live in alignment with the planet, you also help yourself and like can get completely in alignment with what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And I just think it's an awesome way to live.
Well, you know, you mentioned that you were kind of already using these clean ingredients, maybe for your skincare or the bathroom products. Is that something that came from your upbringing, from your mom or your dad, or, you know, or maybe your grandma even? She seems to be an important part of your life.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. My grandma actually grew up in Switzerland. So she moved to the States when she was like when they had kids. So they were European and they moved over here. And she had always said stuff about eating organic. And my mom also, she's a health coach and she studied nutrition. So I was raised in a way that was, it's funny. I have this very vivid memory. My mom used to pack my lunches and we had these cotton plastic baggies and everybody used to make fun of me for them in lunch. Like in elementary school, I would have my sandwich in a plastic, it was a reusable baggie. And they all had them in plastic baggies. And I told my mom, I was like, we can't do this anymore. I'm getting made fun of. Like, I didn't want to do it. And I remember there was like this point in me where I was resisting this like eco-friendly stuff that my mom was already doing. And then eventually I think I grew into it because I really wouldn't be where I was without the way that I was raised. Because, you know, we ate clean food. We already had clean products. And I remember like my mom she was filling her own cleaning supplies when I was little, and that's what we cleaned with. And I just didn't really know it. And like when I moved out and I lived on my own, you know, you just kind of go with, oh, my roommate's doing this, I'll just do this, or this at the store, I'll get it. And something fell off in my life, honestly, just didn't feel right. And I had to make my way back to it. And my mom and I talk about it now. We're like, you were right. Like we went back to it. Like I went back to how I was raised. And again, I'm the extreme. Like there's things that they weren't doing. Like they didn't compost for a while. And she was like, I can't, I don't know how. It overwhelmed her. And I was like, oh, we're going to do it. It's going to be okay. Like we're going to be okay. And so there were things that I definitely have taught them too throughout the whole thing. But it really goes back to kind of how I was raised, and just having, I think, a really open view on different ways to live and different things that you can have in your lifestyle. And then also a respect for the planet. Like that was something that was huge when I was growing up with my parents. Like when I was 2 years old, they were hiking with me in a backpack. And that was just how I've always been. Like they've been very big outside, and they were big on getting me to ski. I learned to ski when I was really little. I learned to surf when I was little. I used to teach like stand-up paddleboarding, and they like hooked that up for me when I was in middle school. That was my job on the side. And that's kind of how they have always been. And I think that's a big part of my foundation of why I care and why I do what I do.
Well, and that's a really strong foundation. And you are look, you really came into your teens and your early adulthood with such a force of having this appreciation for the planet that most of us don't start out life with. I mean, I've got to believe that you come across a lot of your friends, probably even, or acquaintances that are like, I've never spent a day outdoors, or I've never been surfing or backpacking, or any of these kind of things that ground us into having this appreciation for the planet. Are you still living in New York City? So I think of that as like the concrete jungle.
Ohio, right, exactly. It is, that was really hard for me, honestly. I struggled a lot to connect with nature there. It was definitely like, I call it my robot Skylar phase, where I was in this, I'm glad it happened. And I have appreciation for that city like nobody else. It taught me so much, but I really realized like I need nature. It's a big part of me and who I am, and just building a foundation for like my happy life with outside of everything else. It's a huge part. And so I actually moved, I'm in Columbus, Ohio now. So I get lots of nature, and it's been great. And so, yeah, New York was definitely hard.
It's good to feed your soul like that. But how do you and I are a different generation, and I love that we're coming together on this very important subject. But how do you share with, your friends or people who you come across about inspiring them to have that love for the planet that maybe most likely they didn't have that interjection with their parents or their grandparents early on, to show them that you can make your own cleaning products. You can choose, clean ingredients for your products. I mean, most teenagers I know, when they go into a store, they're just picking something that looks pretty cool or shiny or fun and glittery off the shelf, not even turning over the back of the bottle to look at the ingredients. So how do you talk their language?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I really think that's what I love to do, because it makes sense for people who are a little older than me. Like a lot of my followers that are older than me, they get it. There's not a lot of me explaining to them, but I would say a huge part of my audience and my community are Gen Z and are younger than me or my age. And the cool thing about Gen Z is that they're really motivated, and they want to make a change. They're here to make a change. They just might not know how to do it. And they're hungry for education, and they're hungry to like create a world that, that they want. I think they're in this really cool generation where anything's possible for them. There's not a lot of, Gen Z gets a bad rap sometimes, I think, because there's not always this, like, they might not have the work ethic or like X, Y, and Z. Like everybody always has something to say about Gen Z.
Every generation has their issues.
Right. I have a love for Gen Z because they're really here to make change. Like they're here to do the thing. And I think when I work on connecting with them, it's really about reminding them of the power that they have to make the change. And I think when I talk about, being outside and connecting to nature, whenever somebody asks me what they can do to be sustainable, that's always my number one answer, is to get outside and remind yourself why you're going to do this. Because if you don't have motivation behind it and you don't have a reason behind it, you're not going to hold the habit. It's not going to stay. And so that's really like my number one thing. And I like to share all the time of things that I do to be outside. And it looks different for everybody. Like you might not be into surfing. You might not be into hiking. You might not be into bike riding. Like you could just be into walking, or you could be laying out at the beach. Like those are all ways to connect with the planet. And I like to share them and inspire people to do it, because that's the number one thing I think. You owe it. And I think there's so much to learn in nature as well. Like Mama Earth, she has so many, I call them codes, but just teachings and information that she can give us. And that, I think that's the biggest part. Anybody who can get their hands on it and get that learning, then they have a little bit of fire under them to get change into their life. And so that's kind of my way I like to share, is like having fun and knowing that it can be fun and it looks different for everybody, and inspiring people to just get outside and connect with nature in whatever way they can.
Yeah, because it is a serious topic. I mean, when we think about it, if we're looking at the science or the numbers and what they tell us, right, 2050 could look like a fireball. And that's a really scary thing. You know, for me, even some days, I mean, I live to be more eco-friendly every day, whether it's through my food or my packaging choices or my business, whatever it is. I feel like some days is what I'm really doing isn't making a difference. You know, I'm one person. How can that really make a difference? And I feel like when we're on social and we're looking at like your post and we look how simple and vibrant that you make it, it seems attainable. But then we kind of get thrust back into our daily life and it's back to the grind. It's going to the store and trying to, I mean, look at all the packaging waste that comes from our food. So it's like, you know, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how do we keep that motivation every day, knowing that we're one person and we're trying to remember that the things that we're doing each day could make a difference. Got some insight on that? I'd love to hear it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is something that I think about all the time, because it's a really common feeling, especially like with the grocery store. You can't even go in. It's almost nearly impossible to do it plastic free, like completely. There's always some kind of hidden plastic. And, you know, my idea on this is, I think our actions are just as important as our mindset on this whole thing. And so the more that we, you know, get in this idea of, I'm not going to make a difference, I'm only one person, it's going to end up in a fireball anyways in 50 years or however many years, the more that we're creating that reality that we're living in. And so personally, I think my job, just as much as cleaning up my habits, is also cleaning up my mindset and the way that I think about things and holding the highest vision for the planet. So we all know, we're in a really pivotal time on the planet to make change in so many ways, like not just with the environment, but with everything, with the way that the world is going. We're in a really pivotal place, and it's really important to hold the highest vision for what we want and truly live that. So, sometimes it's really easy for me to get wrapped up in like this fear mindset of like, oh my gosh, X, Y, and Z could happen. Oh my gosh, there's no hope, X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 blah. But I really find that it's also like more important to even just imagine the possibility of what it could be like. Imagine the possibility, the highest vision, the best possible option of like everybody being super eco-friendly and super connected to the earth and like all good vibes. You know, you go into the grocery store and there are tons of plastic-free options, and it's the norm to bring your own containers, and it's the norm to bring your own bags. And like, there are pockets of that reality. And I think that's really what's important, is to look at those pockets where we are seeing this happen and stick to that and hold the hope there, because that's what's going to trickle in. And like living in that kind of world, even if it's in our head and we're just living it out, I think it's so important. Like, you have no idea how big of a ripple each person individually has. And I talk about this all the time, but you go to the grocery store and you bring your bags and you think, I'm just one person and I'm bringing my bags. But that's not really necessarily the case, because you're at the grocery store and you smile at somebody and they see the bags in your car and they think, oh, I forgot my bags, but I'll bring them next time because I remember now. And you just change, ripple there. Okay. And then they do the same thing. And then somebody
Yeah.
else gets reminded of the bags. And then you're checking out and you're talking to the girl and she's like, oh, this bag's so cute. You know, I forgot my bag, but I'm going to bring mine again. Or this is a good idea. I didn't know that this even existed. And so there's a huge ripple with your actions as well. And I think it's important to remember that it's not just that you're one person and you just do one thing, because there's a ripple that goes beyond what you can even comprehend sometimes. So that's kind of where I like to sit, by like holding the highest vision of the planet and what we can create, because we are in a really pivotal moment. And it's not like before where we don't have the education or we don't have the information to make change. And it's not like we don't have the resources really either. There are tons and tons of cool companies doing things. We have support by local communities. We have people on the ground doing the thing. And I think that's really the importance of it. And if you look at like the way that how far we've come, and also the way that we've made change, it's by connection with people. Like you can see all you want, you can, like all the ways to make change. But I think when it comes down to it, it's that grassroots connection, people to people, conversations like this that really help inspire and hold the change. And so that's another thing, is like, I just like to talk about it. I like to have conversations with people and stay positive, because again, like the fear, I feel like we don't go anywhere with that. So
No, we don't. And so let me just make two comments. I love that you brought up the word ripple for two reasons. And first, it's because I'm a huge Grateful Dead fan. I love music, and Ripple happens to be one of my favorite songs by the Dead or Jerry Garcia. So thanks for that little ripple there. And then secondly, I had a major ripple experience the other night when my aunt and I went out to dinner. I planned ahead, like I try to do when I go out, especially for a meal, and I brought my little glass containers. They were in a cotton bag. I had two containers in there. So when we were done with dinner, neither one of us had finished our meal. And the waitress came over and she was like, can I get you a to-go container? I'm like, oh, no, I have them right here. And I leaned over, I had them hanging on the other chair at the table. And I took them out, and the girl goes, oh my gosh, I love your zero waste containers. And I looked at her and I'm like, I love that you use the term even zero waste. Like this is an exciting moment that her and I were having. And she goes, I take my bag to the grocery store all the time. She goes, I never thought about taking a food container with me to the restaurant. And here she is, somebody that works in a restaurant all the time. And I could tell by her reaction in our conversation that this was a ripple effect happening right there at that moment. I just got chills thinking about it, because I know that girl is forever changed now in her ideas of how she's going to pre-plan and go to restaurants from now on. So I think you're right. I think that the examples that we do every day, whether we feel that there's something special or not, are this ripple effect that we will never even understand. We'll never truly appreciate the power that we have in our actions and our conversations. So I just want to thank you for bringing up that ripple fact there.
That is so cool. I also had chills. I was like, that is so cool, because those reactions and like what you're saying, it's just a connection with people too. It brings you together. It's a conversation. It brings a smile to your face. And then she's always going to remember that. And I just think that's so cool. And that's the way that I think this whole movement should be working. And I think it does work that way. That's the special part about it.
Not to mention, I did see the cute couple that was at the table next to us. I saw that girl eyeing up my containers, and I know that she was jealous when she had to carry out that styrofoam container. So that's probably another ripple effect that's going to happen that, right, I couldn't even count on. So yeah, it's very interesting that I have to remind myself a lot of days that even though it doesn't feel what I'm doing is impactful, a lot of things that I do personally feel just normal. They feel like just the right thing to do. And quite honestly, that feeling of why do I do what I do is hard for me to put into words. So sometimes I find it hard to share with people why I think it's important. Do you have that same problem?
Yes and no. I do feel as though it's part of my gift to like communicate that. I love talking to people, and that's something that has always been a part of my life, is just creating conversation. Like I'll talk to the guy in line behind me for like 10 minutes. And it's, sometimes I get a little overwhelmed, I think, because I have so much that I would want to say to people. But I think really just, I get overwhelmed in a different way of like, I have so much information and there's so many things that I could tell you. And there's so much that I just wanted to share. It's not that I necessarily don't know what to say or how to get people inspired, because I feel like that's pretty easy to do, but it's more of like, what's the next step for them and how to get them to actually take a step. That's where I get a little overwhelmed. And, you know, again, like that's why I created what I created, because I wanted to have resources that people could go to that feel digestible and easy, and they know that they can do it. And it's like, okay, here's steps. Okay, composting, got it. Okay, zero waste shower, got it. I can do that. And so that, I think, is the part that can, because the whole thing is really overwhelming when you look at it in a big picture and you realize how much trash you're throwing out, how much and then you think, I'm just one person and there's so many other people on the planet and there's so many other companies and X, Y, and Z. And that's where the overwhelm comes in. And so, I mean, I try to not stay in that too long, but I do think it's important to feel that, because again, just as much as the like, you know, connecting to nature, that overwhelm and that like urgency behind it is also important in what we need to do and the motivation behind it. So I think that's kind of, it's a yes and no.
Some days are better than others. I totally get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And going back to what you said at the beginning of our conversation, how you moved room by room, which I thought was pretty interesting, because I recently put out my book, finally to the world. It became true. I wrote a book called Going Plastic Free Room by Room. And when I wrote it, I felt like it was the easiest way to get a hold of that, right? Because it seems overwhelming if you think, okay, I'm just going to go plastic free at home. Like that's an overwhelming thought. But when I saw the vision for the book, I realized, what if we could just chunk it down into little rooms at a time? And, you know, you touched on that earlier. It was like, okay, I did my closet. I feel good about my closet. Now let's see what the bathroom holds. And was the bathroom for you because you saw that you used a lot of products there? Or what kind of drove you to the next room to pick where to go clean or where to, you know, reduce waste?
I think it was more just that, to me, I felt like I had a pretty good grasp on my food, and the kitchen seemed a little more overwhelming than the bathroom. And I was pretty conscious at that point of how much trash I was creating in the bathroom. And I was like, all right, this seems like this is the next step. We're going to go here and we're going to see. And I just started it one by one, like one product at a time, one swap at a time. And eventually I was like, oh, I got a whole zero waste bathroom right now. We're good to go here. Now what's next? And then that's when I went to the kitchen. I went to the kitchen, and that was overwhelming for me for a little bit, because it's really hard. That's to me, like that's still probably one of my hardest areas is the food shopping. I try, but again, like we are human and we live a busy life, and it's not as accessible as it could be. And I think that's a sign that there's a ton of opportunity for really genius ideas to come in, but also, you know, we can try and do better, but I try to be easy on myself there. I make as many swaps as I can. I buy from local farmers. I buy local. And I had a whole journey also. I was vegan, so I was eating completely vegan for a while, and I switched to I started to eat meat again. And that was a whole process for me in so many ways. And that, honestly, if I'm looking at one of the biggest lessons that I've learned becoming more eco-friendly, that was one of them, was just creating this grace with myself as well. So my body was craving meat, and there was a lot of signs that have been leading up to it. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm vegan, I'm not. And I like avoided it for a really long time, like a whole year probably, of me like, there's no way I can do this, for many reasons. Like, it wasn't just environmental stuff, but it was like animal stuff and also just health benefits. Like, I liked how I felt. And then eventually I worked up the courage, and I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to figure out a way to do this in the most eco-friendly way. And it was cool because I learned about regenerative farming, and I learned about supporting really cool ranchers that have sustainable practices. And I met like one of my favorite people that I've met in the sustainability world is Red Star Beef, and they're a family-owned ranch in Colorado. And I wouldn't have done it if I didn't eat meat. So I like order meat from them now, and we get it delivered, and they do regenerative farming, and it's like direct to consumer, and they're really great people. And I talk to them, like we message all the time, and it's really cool. And I wouldn't have done it without that. And so when I switched to being vegan, like there were so many lessons in that. So I, one, realized that it's not about perfectionism. It's not about beating yourself up and being hard on yourself. It's about creating habits that will last and that will make change that you can do for the rest of your life. And also having a grace for myself and listening to my body, because I am connected to the planet. And like, I also have to trust that there was reasons that my body was needing meat, and it led me down all the path that I went down. And I still eat meat, and I don't eat dairy products, and I don't eat like a lot of things, and I eat local and all of the things that I try to do to be more eco-friendly when I eat. But it was just a really cool experience for me to look back on, because I learned so much just about myself and how I think of things, how I view things, and be more open. So that it really gave me a lot of information too on like where people can be in their sustainability journey, and how everybody's in a different area, or they could being sustainable and being a sustainable person can look completely different for me than it does for somebody else. And it can still be as big of an impact. So it was I learned a lot from that.
Yeah. And that was really well said, because it took me a while too to realize that we are not put here to live the same life as everybody else, right? What may work for you might not work for me. And our bodies are so different. We might look similar. We might have the
Mm-hmm.
same similar parts and insides and all that kind of stuff, but our bodies are requiring different things along the way. And for me, that's kind of a recent awareness, is that I, for a long time, would be like, well, why aren't you doing this? Or you should be doing that. And really, it's like, no, you need to do what feels best for your body. And if it's eating that way, or, doing those exercises, or whatever the life is, that it's your journey, it's your path. And I like how you said that, doing it with as much grace as you can, and being as kind to yourself as you can in that journey, because somewhere along the way, we forgot about self-care. And self-care is not only for
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, but it's for where we live, and I think we can definitely see the shift in coming back to that. And I'm really excited for the future that we have, only because I can see that the mindset's changed. It's not a fad. It's not something that we're hoping is going to
Mm-hmm.
shift. The shift happens, and that's, to me,
Right.
gives me hope on the days when I'm feeling like, I don't know, is what I'm really doing. And here I have a whole business based on plastic free products, based on refillable, and getting rid of those things. So, some days I do have to remind myself that there are so many millions of people who are with me on this journey too. And we're all really
Mm-hmm.
in this nice space together. So I'm so glad that we were able to connect, and you're sharing, your experience through uh, Healthy Earth Habits, right? Healthy Earth Habits is where I follow you on Instagram.
Happy Earth. Happy Earth Habits on Instagram, and then
Happy Earth
Sky
Habits,
Saba
right?
on TikTok are
I just
those are
wanted to
where
make
I'm
sure
at.
I was getting that right. Yes,
Yes.
Happy Earth Habits, and I feel like, whoever is listening today, that they can go there for this really fun way of finding out what options are. Because if you're like me, when you started, and even currently when you're looking to replace a product, you might buy something and it'd be like, oh shit, that did not work for me at all. My skin didn't like it. My hair didn't appreciate it, right? It didn't work for whatever reason. I don't like the smell in my house
Mm-hmm.
when I use that. So I do like to remind people that there are so many great companies doing wonderful things these days, that just because you try one of these swaps and it doesn't work for you, look for another company. But more importantly, take the time to tell that company what you didn't like, because there might be an improvement that they can make. And I say that because, as a business owner and a product manufacturer, I want to hear that feedback. I want to know that I am given that opportunity to make some improvements and make some changes. And it's only when we have conversations with each other and give that feedback that we're going to see those improvements come across. So So before we wrap up our conversation today, Skylar, what do you think? What do you like to share with people of, because you and I could tell we've got 100 things that we want to share with people when we have their ear. But what are kind of like maybe your one
Right.
or top two that you like to get out to somebody when you're meeting them?
My number one is get outside and just connect with the earth and remember why you would want to be doing anything to help save her anyways. And so that's my number one. And number two is take it one step at a time and go easy on yourself. I like to say one swap at a time. But like we were saying, room by room, area by area, product by product, do that and see where you end up and see what happens. Don't give up on it. And my other like little tidbit thing that I like to get them to do is look at your trash, look at what you're throwing out and see what you're throwing out a lot of. Inspect your trash. Like it's one of my favorite things to do. And then see what you can do to swap that out. So if you have a lot of, I don't know, plastic in there, figure out how you can lower your plastic. Like for me, I realized, I'm throwing out, like for a while I was throwing out coffee grounds. I can turn these actually into body scrub. Like you can reuse those. And so it just is a way for you to figure out different things that you can do. And so those would be my three. Like those are my top three. Get outside, swap by swap, and then inspect your trash. And that's kind of where I like to leave it.
That's beautiful. Well said. So tell everybody where they can find you.
Okay, so you can find me on Instagram at Happy Earth Habits, and then on TikTok at Skylar Saba. And then you also can find all my favorite products, all my tips on happyearthhabits.com. So I have a big list of all the products that I love, all of the swaps that I love, and just composting information, conscious outfits and sustainable fashion. It's all on there. So happyearthhabits.com as well.
So before we close off, are you still doing digital branding for companies?
Yes. Yep. And so I actually have two businesses. So I have Happy Earth Habits, and then I have Groove Street Creative, which is my creative agency. And I do website design, I do Instagram marketing, and I also do branding for conscious businesses. So with that, I felt like there was a lack of understanding of like how conscious businesses work, and then also designers, and just again going to school for design and understanding the design process. It's very like 1, 2, 3, 4, do it like this. And then running a business, Happy Earth Habits, I realized, this is a little different. Like I like to flow with things. I like to follow my intuition. I like to really feel into my decisions and make them consciously. So I also put my skills there. And so that's where I get to work. I get to work with a ton of different businesses and all sorts of industries, make conscious change and really help to connect with their vision. So when I design stuff, I really like to help them connect with the vision of where they see their business going from and design from there. So again, it's pretty similar of like holding the highest vision for their company and the highest vision for the planet. It's all kind of the same thing. And so that's really what I help people do, is connect to the vision and hold it. So yes, I do the digital side also, but they're both. Yeah.
And what I imagine you get to see, which is really satisfying, is you get to see so many companies that are coming out really making this push to do ethical, to do natural, to do less waste. And that's really inspiring to see from that side. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
It's a really cool thing. I like to see the behind the scenes too. And I get to help in so many different ways. And even people that come to me and they're like, I'm conscious in this area of it, like mindset wise, maybe it's like, how can we be conscious for the environment? Like, let's pull that into all different ways. So I love that I get to do all parts of it.
Well, Skylar, I can't thank you enough for joining me today and making the time and just bringing your bright, bubbly self to the screen and to the audio for those who are not watching us, right now. But you are a true light in what we're trying to do, and I'm grateful for all the efforts that you do to bring it out to the world. So thank you. I really appreciate it. So I want to, say to anybody who's listening out there, thank you so much for listening to the Grateful Redhead podcast. And if you know somebody amazing like Skylar, please contact me and introduce us. I would love to have them on the show as well. So if you enjoy listening, you can find us on all the places that you listen to podcasts at, but be sure to subscribe. We do put out new episodes about every 2 weeks or so. And until we all meet again, please be kind to yourself, be grateful, and love one another. Peace out. So before you go today, I want to thank you for listening to this episode. You know, I've built a business on formulating natural household cleaning and body products without plastic bottles or plastic packaging. So if you'd like to give them a try, head on over to wastefreeproducts.com and use promo code Grateful Redhead for 10% off your entire order. Thanks for listening.